Over the last 2 weeks, I've been in a long, protracted back and forth with my bank over a fraudulent charge. And while this is still going on, I thought it was really important to highlight why it is so important to control your anger in situations that are not only stressful, but time consuming and unbelievably frustrating. So, the long and short of it was in March, there were two fraudulent charges on my account to the same place for two different amounts, a small amount and then a much bigger amount. And while the bigger amount was only around a little over $100, the point is I had called my bank, talked about stating this is fraud. I've never been to this place, don't know this place, never get authorization for this place. They were very helpful. They fixed the charge right away. I thought that was the end of it. But last month, about 2 weeks ago, I received a letter stating, no, we're not going to honor that. We felt that the charge was proper. Since that date, I have actually had to call the bank about 6 or 7 times to different lines, different departments, trying to appeal and get to the bottom of this, going to the bank branch several times, trying to get more information, trying to get help or assistance in order to say, listen, this was not me. This is a fraudulent charge, on top of the fact that one of the fraudulent charges was honored and they found that it was fraud. And while the background of me going to the bank and what ends up happening with that isn't necessarily the importance of the story, the importance of the story is something that I learned, something that I took out of it that I think would help a lot of people. And that's learning to control your anger in these situations is a really beneficial tool, not only for stressful situations, but overall in life. Anger is probably one of the most basic human emotions. It is something that is universal among all genders, cultures, ages, you name it. Every single human being will experience anger in some way throughout their life, if not many, many times throughout their life. So if we're going to all experience something like that, it's then important to realize situations in which that would not benefit you or the situation itself. So, for instance, in my situation, calling different departments, trying to find different people, spending unbelievable amounts of my free time doing that was incredibly frustrating. Going to the bank was incredibly frustrating, and getting the runaround was frustrating. But one of the things that I had to keep reminding myself is those individuals sometimes that I was talking to were not the reason for my frustration. Those individuals were just trying to help me. And while I was annoyed by the process and I was annoyed by being, basically shuffled from one department to another department to another department and not really being helped, and I was voicing my frustration in some ways, I was never nasty or angry about it. I would always make a point of saying, I really appreciate you helping me, but I do find this situation rather frustrating and I don't understand why I can't find anyone that can help. Is there somebody above you that might be able to assist me and might know a little bit more on that? And I think so often we see, whether it's in television, movies, even in books sometimes, these characters, these individuals who get so angry and then things will work out in their favor. But in reality, that's not always the best way to do things. In fact, I would argue that that's almost one of the worst ways to do things. When you look at any stressful situation, any difficult situation, has you being more emotional, more angry, more almost irrational in the situation benefited you in some way? I would likely argue not. I can think of any time in which I lost my cool. That never really helped me or the situation. If anything, it made people feel hurt, it made me feel angry, and it really led to no resolution. And while in this situation, I still haven't necessarily gotten to any resolution that I'm happy with, one thing that I was really happy with is I never lost my cool. I always was polite. You can be very aggressive, you can be very assertive without being nasty, without being rude, without being callous to another person. And I think that if you realize that and you go into the situation knowing that, it can only benefit you in the long run. Because when you have that situation, such as where you're having very stressful, things aren't working out, when you have an everyday situation, you're able to control it a lot better. So if you can control it in the worst, you obviously can control it in a moderate or even the best situation. So, what are some of the ways that I have found that it helped me to get to that point in this realization? Well, I've been working on it for years, and I think that working on controlling either your anger or frustration or things like that is similar to a muscle. You kind of train it over and over again over time, and you get a little bit better at it, and a little bit better at it, and a little bit better at it. One situation that I always found so interesting in history is John D. Rockefeller. There's a story about him and his anger, and apparently he was always unbelievably cool and calm under pressure. And it's something that biographers, I think Ron Chernow specifically, talked about how he had cultivated that over decades. And it's no different than any of us. We can cultivate that over decades too, getting to the point where you're not allowing that to get to you, and you're going to keep going in the manner that you need to get the what you want accomplished. In this situation, I wasn't able to get it accomplished so far, but I'm not giving up. That's the other part of it. You don't give up. You keep pressing until ultimately the answer is no. Right now, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I know that I didn't cut off any chance I had because I lost my cool and started screaming at somebody. Because once you've lost your anger, really have kind of lost a bit of yourself. I think so. It's something that I've worked on. Just wanted to highlight it. It's important. I think that if we all worked on controlling our anger a little bit more in everyday life, maybe not biting off somebody's head who's just in customer service, who may not even have the power to do anything, doesn't really benefit the situation and doesn't benefit them. So next time you're in a stressful situation, consider the situation beforehand too. If you know you're going to call something and maybe money's involved, time's involved, both, like in my situation, you know the situation's going to be somewhat stressful to begin with. So perhaps take that into perspective before you even take the call. Maybe go for a walk beforehand. Take a few breaths. Realize what you're going to be doing, and that might help you be in the right frame of mind. I'm not saying you're going to be perfect. I'm far from it myself. But ultimately, one thing that we all know is if we do take our time and we all do kind of have a little bit more perspective and a little bit more patience, the situation might be better overall. Something to give it a choice. It's something that I've been working on, and I'm happy with how I handled it, only because I know that I was true to myself. Are you true to yourself?